Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Rocky Top Rumble. I'm your host, Matt Ray, and tonight I am joined by Brandon Martin, Garen Covington, CJ Eldridge, and the reigning champion, Luke Thomas. Tonight we will cover the highlights of the UAB game, look into the future a little bit, and crown another champion. Luke come out on top of last week in a very hard-fought battle. There's been a lot of chatter in the group message this week that he will not come out on top, but Luke's feeling pretty confident coming in. And we're going to go right over to him as we start the night off with question number 1 with 45 seconds on the clock. Luke, you are up. Tell me about Jarrett Garantano's gutsy performance. Is it enough to earn him the job moving forward?
Well, it's a very good question, Matt. And, we've talked about this a lot in our group chat. Jarrett Garantano, he came out, he did what he was supposed to do. I mean, it's hard to throw a football when you've got 5 screws in your hand and a cast over your arm. That's really difficult to do. He came out and he played well enough to win Tennessee the game, obviously, right? Now, did he make some mistakes in there? Obviously. I mean, you always do. But JT Shroud, I watched him in high school. He makes his mistakes in bunches. And when he made that one bad throw, I knew about 4 or 5 that were going to follow. I think Pruitt made the decision, while it's frustrating, to put Garantano back in that game, and I think it really paid off for Tennessee. And I do not think he will start versus Kentucky, though.
All right, Luke coming away with 2 points there on the first question of the first round. I'm going to go over to CJ Eldridge. CJ, what are your thoughts? Garantano's gutsy performance, enough to earn him the title of being the starter for the rest of the year? You are on the clock. Go.
Definitely not, because, he did not play well at all still. He left a whole lot of points on the board. Defense had 3, maybe, I think 4 actually, different turnovers where they were on UAB side of the field getting ready to score, and most of them ended up in field goals, and they should have beaten UAB by a whole lot more because Garantano could not drive the team down the field.
CJ keeping it simple, coming away with 3 points there. I'm going to go over to a man who never keeps it simple, who brings a very in-depth analysis all the time. Brandon Martin, tell me your thoughts on Jarrett Garantano's gutsy one-handed performance. Go.
All the respect in the world for Jarrett Garantano and what he did. It's so hard to play a football game at the SEC level anyway, but with screws in your hand, surgery less than a week later, you can only respect how hard he played. That said, he's not going to be the starter going forward. For all the knocks that Luke wanted to bring up about JT Shroud, let me give you interceptions that Garantano likes to throw. He likes to throw them in the end zone. He did it against Georgia State. He did it against BYU. He did it against Florida. He had the fumble for the recovery and touchdown against Alabama. He had another interception thrown in the end zone against UAB. Those are habits that you can't have. Those are mistakes that he can't make. As much as I respect him playing so hard and playing through the pain, he's just keeping Brian Maurer's seat warm.
All right, Brandon coming away with 5 points and out to a solid lead here. But Garen Covington's going to have something to say about that. Garen, you're on the clock now. Talk to me about Jarrett Garantano.
Yeah, I want to start this off kind of like Brandon did. JG showed a lot of toughness, as he has throughout his whole entire Tennessee career. But I actually think the injury could limit him some because he took a lot of hits Saturday, and he was getting up, and it was just it was clear to see he couldn't grip the ball very well. And he there in the red zone, he makes a terrible mistake, and Jeremy Pruitt getting into him again really just tells the story. That's happened a lot this season, and just shows how inconsistent he's been. Definitely one of the most inconsistent, as the QBs. I think as soon as Brian Maurer gets healthy, it's clearly Brian Maurer's job. Definitely the most versatile QB on this roster, and he's going to give Tennessee the most points, which is what this offense needs.
All right. After the first question of the first round, the defending champion is on the ropes. Brandon Martin leads with a score of 5, followed by Garen with 4, CJ with 3, Luke Thomas with 2. We're going right back into the first round here, and we're going to talk about we're going to stay on the topic of injuries, but we're going to talk about it from a team standpoint. Some injuries are starting to pile up with this team. There's some nagging injuries, finishing out the season with SEC play. Saw Wanye Morris struggle a little bit. I have to think that has something to do with his injuries. Luke, how big of a concern are the injuries to this team right now as they try to close out this season and make a bowl game? Go.
Thank you. Good question, Matt, as always. But look, the offensive line has stayed healthy for the most part this entire season, right? And the offensive line has played great for the most part this entire season. I mean, where can you start with the offensive line? I mean, last year they were abysmal. Will Friend was able to transform this group into a very competent offensive line and a very good offensive line that could protect the pass rush and establish the run game. Now, that being said, now that they have injuries, how is that going to affect them? Wanya Morris and Darnell Wright, how is that going to affect them? Well, we're going to have to wait and see. There's no real way to answer that question, but they're going to get a little worse. I mean, you can't make the point that they're not. But I would not be fairly worried about it, but it is a slight concern.
All right, not a strong showing by the defending champion there as he comes away from the first round with 5 points. CJ, we're going to go back over to you. See if you can actually answer the question that Luke did not answer. How big of a concern is it that the injuries are starting to pile up a little bit for this team?
Well, I'll tell you who has earned their paycheck over the past couple of years, and that is that strength and conditioning staff and Craig Fitzgerald. Usually the past 5 or 6 years before he shows up, half the team's usually injured halfway through the year under the last staff because they weren't working out very well. Their strength and conditioning program was terrible. That's not been the case this year. There have been a few injuries, but that happens to every team piling up at the end of the year. I don't think it's a concern. I don't really think it should be an excuse either because these next 3 teams that you're playing up against, 2 of them, you are way more talented than in Kentucky and Vanderbilt. Missouri, you're about even on par with. They may have a better quarterback situation, but really there shouldn't be any concern. If this had happened in October, then absolutely there would be a concern. But right now, no.
All right, good answer, CJ. You're going to come out of that with 7 points. Brandon, we're going over to you. You're a guy that really focuses on the offensive line. One of the spots that the injury bug has happened to. Don't focus on that for me, but tell me just about these injuries and what you're thinking. You're on the clock now.
I think CJ made a really good point. It's important to note that Craig Fitzgerald has made such a huge difference in the makeup of this team because we've seen so many injuries pile up over the last few years, and we've not seen that this year. That said, Darnell Wright's one of the most important players on this team. He's a right tackle that has helped change the complexion of this team, and Tennessee's running game has struggled with him out. Wanya Morris is dinged up. That right arm's bothering him. Darrell Taylor's dinged up a little bit. He was able to play through it. Bryce Thompson. And then obviously the issues at quarterback with Brian Maurer and Jarrett Garantano. Yeah, you're concerned about injuries right now. You're trying to – that was why Tennessee did what they did against UAB. They were trying to get the win and stay as healthy as they possibly could so they can make this stretch run. They're concerned about it, but they should be able to manage it.
All right. Really good answer there by Brandon as he extends his lead out to 9 points. Garen, you need 2 points to push Luke out the door for the walk of shame. Talk to me about the injuries. Where's your concern level right now? You're on the clock. Go.
Not very concerned, but one thing I will say is the offensive line has to keep a lot of Tennessee fans, looking at that because not so much of, just 2 players. And Wanya Morris is dinged up. Darnell Wright did not play, but just the overall depth. And that's a position that you really need depth at right now because if Brian Maurer comes back and he doesn't have adequate, protection and he takes some more shots, then things are not going to be looking good because Brian Maurer has had 2 concussions in 8 days, and we can't. Tennessee fans are dearly hoping that their quarterback situation improves, and right now that's what you need.
I wasn't very impressed with Garen's answer, and it ultimately has come to a first-round draw between him and Luke. So we're going to go to a 25-second tiebreaker on a question that neither one of these guys got to practice for. We'll start with Luke. Luke, which coach has been more impressive this season in rebuilding their unit? Will Friend or Tracy Rocker? Go.
Come on, dude. Obviously, Will Friend. I mean, look at the offensive line from last year to this year. That offensive line is extremely impressive. They can stop the pass rush. Hats off to Will Friend, without a doubt. He needs a raise, definitely. He got criticized in his first year. Expect that to go completely away. He earned this. He did a really good job.
All right. You're up. Tell me which guy deserves more credit right now, Will Friend or Tracy Rocker? Go.
Easily Will Friend. That's not up for debate. But the one thing that I want to focus on is not so much because of technique or anything like that, but the overall aggression that this offensive line went down to Alabama and put some of those kids on their backs. And how long has it been since Tennessee fans have saw that? I mean, you on some instances near the goal in the red zone, we saw Tennessee just driving their defensive line back.
Garen, you won it when you talked about the Alabama game and the overall aggression. Luke, you got a good run. Last week you got to take a victory lap. This week you're going to take the walk of shame. We'll see you again next week. We appreciate you coming on. We'll probably talk to you in our group chat in just a few minutes. You'll have some articles to get out. Thanks. Have a good one. All right, moving on to round 2, 35 seconds on the clock for CJ Eldridge. CJ, talk to me about Bryce Thompson's individual performance last night. One of the best that we've saw from a defensive back in general, but tying a school record with 3 interceptions. What did this individual performance remind you of, and how long has it been since we saw an individual performance like that from a defender? You're on the clock. Go.
This is going to throw you guys off a whole lot, but Daniel Batuli last week. I think a lot of people forget that Batuli last week probably had the best game of his entire career. And that's really how his whole career has gone. Every game you'll see after the stats, and he'll have like 12, 13 tackles. You'll be like, oh, you don't even notice that he's in the game half the time. And I really think that was probably one of the best defensive performances last week that he had, that Tennessee players had in a couple years. And Bryce Thompson's was great, but at the same time, it's kind of UAB's fault for throwing to Bryce Thompson 3 different times.
All right, really good answers there by CJ as he has come out of the corner swinging tonight. 4 points here to start round 2. Brandon Martin, you're on the clock. Talk to me about Bryce Thompson's individual performance last night. Go.
This is the best performance we've seen from a Tennessee defender since 1999 when Deion Grant came up with 3 interceptions in a single game against Auburn. That's how long it's been since we've seen what Bryce Thompson did against anybody. You can say it's just UAB. UAB's got some NFL talent in that receiver room. Bryce Thompson comes out a little dinged up. He's hurt. He's trying to play through it, and he does something the Volunteers have not seen in 20 years. And he was about an inch away from breaking the record with a 4th interception. It's been 20 years since we've seen it. The last defensive back to get 3 in a game was Deion Grant. Bryce Thompson's in some rarefied air there.
All right. Good answer by Brandon. He has tied CJ here after the first question with 4. Garen, you're on the clock. Talk to me about Bryce Thompson's individual performance.
The one thing I want to say about this is that Jeremy Pruitt had Bryce Thompson in the perfect position at all times. And also that the one performance that I think was Eric Berry only had 1 interception in this game, but it was against Tim Tebow in the end zone. He takes it back, completely flips the game, and the Vols think they're in this thing. I think Bryce Thompson, I know he had 3, but he really impacted the game, just like Berry did in that game. So I'm gonna go with that comparison right there. Even though it's only one versus 3, I'm gonna go with that.
All right. I really liked all those answers. Every one of you guys came away with 4 points there. CJ kind of touched on this earlier, which really gathered him some points up. But how much of a concern was the inability to score touchdowns off of the UAB turnovers? I mean, and we saw Tennessee have prime field position several times, and we're not able to do anything with it. CJ, you're on the clock. Tell me about that. Go.
Well, I think it goes back to who was playing quarterback. Jarrett Garantano, or Garantano, as the guy said on ESPNU last night. He was making bad decisions in the red zone. They gave him prime position time and time again to convert, and he did not do it. I think with the other quarterbacks that we have in the room, that would have not been the case, especially Brian Maurer, who's been proven that he can score in the red zone. So I don't think it's much of a concern because the quarterback that's playing, you likely won't see him the rest of the year, assuming there's not an injury.
All right, really good answer there by CJ, out to a total of 8 points. Brandon, talk to me about that. You're a guy that analyzes every aspect of the game. You talked to me about this last night. I know you covered it in your recap. What's your concern with Tennessee not being able to score points there in the red zone against UAB?
My biggest concern is anytime you aren't able to cash in turnovers, you're leaving points on the field, you're letting the team hang around. UAB's a pesky team. They've got a stingy defense. I know Tennessee was beat up on the offensive line. You're using a backup quarterback that's hurt. It doesn't make a lot of sense really to me that he's in there. But you've got to be able to punch some of these in for touchdowns. It was really an issue for Tennessee. They left a lot of points on the board. They let UAB hang around. I think the solution to this is pretty simple. Once you get Darnell Wright back, just run. Once you get inside the 10-yard line, just snap the ball to Jawan Jennings and the Wildcat and let him punch it in.
All right. Good answer there by Brandon. Gets him out to 7 points in round 2. Garen, talk to me about Tennessee's inability to score touchdowns in the red zone after forced turnovers. Go.
I don't think that it's not just because it's concerning against UAB, but this is a repetitive pattern that Tennessee has shown throughout the entire course of the season. They haven't been able to punch it in the red zone. So I think what they should try to do. You got to switch up something. You saw Jawan Jennings in the Wildcat there last night. Maybe I was thinking maybe a jump pass there from Jawan Jennings show his little inner Tim Tebow there. But I think or put Crouch at fullback, try something like that. But I think once the depth that the offensive line gets back.
All right. What we're looking at here with one question to go in round 2 with an elimination coming up is Garen with 6 points, Brandon with 7 points, CJ with 8 points. Now, CJ, we've talked about Tennessee, and they were never really any worry against UAB. The game was kind of always in hand, especially with their inability to move the ball on Tennessee's offense. But, I think there are some players that definitely want this game against UAB back. Which player do you think wants the game back the most? Go.
Absolutely, Wanye Morris. I mean, he's played great all year. He's held his own against SEC opposition, which is tremendous on his part. He's on his way to being a freshman All-American, along with his other teammate, Darnell Wright, who's a true freshman 5-star tackle. But last night, he just wasn't himself. He was getting killed all night off the edge of the line, wasn't picking up any kind of blocks. The quarterbacks was getting hurt a whole lot more. And maybe it was just he overlooked UAB. I'm not sure what it was, but I'm pretty sure if he could go back a week, he would focus on this game a whole lot more.
All right. Really good answers there by CJ. He's out to 10 points. Brandon, you're on the clock. Need to make a run here. Talk to me about who you think wants this game back the most and why.
I agree with CJ. I believe it's Wanye Morris. He's been outstanding all season long. He got beat on a couple of sacks, got beat clean once there, bit on a head fake really bad. It was pretty obvious that he's got an arm that's bothering him. We know he was playing through some injuries. We also saw how ineffective the offensive line was without Darnell Wright. Imagine what it would have looked like without him. I know it wasn't Wanye's best effort, but he still makes a huge impact on that team. He guts it out and goes out there. But I think he would like to have this game back, knowing he's playing some quality pass rushers and knowing that he can be a little more aggressive with them. He doesn't have to worry about their power moves as much, can focus on speed.
All right, really good answer there by Brandon. Garen, you are the lone man down right now. You are at 6 points with both of these guys at 10. Who wants this game back and why?
I think it's Jarrett Garantano only solely because of the fact, let's say he goes out there and has a great game. Maybe he's the starter going forward. You never know. So I'm going to go with JG just because if he were to really put this game away early, gets back that throw in the red zone, comes out in great game, shows the coaching staff, hey, why not give me a chance? Then I think maybe he gets some consideration as the starter going forward. Now, he has not a good game. JT Strout doesn't have a good game. So as long as Brian Maurer's healthy, I think it's clearly Brian Maurer. So I think Jarrett Garantano would love to have this game back and, just a few throws in the red zone.
All right, Garen, I gave you a little extra time there. You weren't able to tie this thing up. You go out with 9 points. We're going to go to Brandon and CJ in the finals. As everybody knows, the finals are sudden death. Each of these guys get a minute on the question. And Brandon, we are going to start with you. Does Tennessee make a bowl game? If so, why? You are on the clock now.
Tennessee absolutely makes a bowl game this year. I say that with absolute confidence. Your games remaining, you have a trip to Kentucky. Now, I mean no disrespect to Kentucky, to Stoops and what he's built up there when I say this, but there's one thing you ought to be able to count on as a Tennessee fan, and that's beating Kentucky. They've lost to them 2 times since I've been alive. When you see a one-dimensional team, Jeremy Pruitt has been able to beat them since he's been at Tennessee. Kentucky literally can't throw the football. I think their defense is a little overrated statistically. I really like Tennessee in that matchup. You look at Mizzou. this team goes as Kelly Bryant goes. Kelly Bryant is banged up. He's hurt. He's still got to go through Florida and Georgia before Tennessee gets him. And then Tennessee has Vanderbilt. They have got to beat this Vanderbilt team. Vandy's down. Not only do I think Tennessee is going to make it to a bowl game, I believe they're going to win out. This offensive line's played better. The defense has played better. And I believe when you get a healthy Brian Maurer back, you see the wide receivers go absolutely off, and Tennessee hits a bowl game with a lot of steam.
I really like one point that you had there, Brandon, is that the wide receivers have an opportunity to really shine going forward. Now, and calling Tennessee to win out is bold, and I agree that Kelly Bryant's going to come off what's going to be a very rough stretch coming into Tennessee, maybe even more limited, maybe even shut the thing down because he's proven his worth at Missouri, in my opinion. But it's always tough to go out to Columbia and win a game, so especially what'll probably be a noon kickoff, but you never know. CJ, Brandon totaled out 7 points right there. You were on the clock. Will Tennessee make a bowl game? If so, how and why? Go.
I think they do make a bowl game this year. You look at their 3 games going forward. You have Kentucky, you have Missouri, and you have Vanderbilt. Going to Kentucky, I mean, it's going to be a little tough. Lexington's always a tougher place to play, but at the same time, Tennessee just does not lose to Kentucky. They hardly ever have. And Kentucky starting a receiver at quarterback. They're one-dimensional. Jeremy Pruitt has killed one-dimensional teams on defense in the past. They should be able to win that one pretty easily, especially with Brian Maurer at quarterback. Missouri, it's kind of the same way. If Kelly Bryant's not playing, it should be a pretty easy win for Tennessee, I think, because another thing is that Missouri is going to be playing Florida and Georgia back-to-back weeks, the 2 best teams in the East, where Tennessee, they got a bye week. The only advantage that Missouri really has in that game is that it's in Missouri. And then Vanderbilt has looked garbage all year. I honestly think this will be an easier win for Tennessee than UAB. I think Tennessee finishes 7-5 out on the year, and none of these 3 games are going to be close. They're going to run through every single one of them.
All right, I am going to give this one in the narrowest of margins to CJ Eldridge, and it is just because of the simple fact that he said he believes Tennessee is going to run away with this one. And I believe that Jeremy Pruitt is making a statement right now. I believe we're seeing a program grow up before our eyes. And Tennessee was always the team that dominated November, and I think Jeremy Pruitt has a chance to do that again. He rested Brian Maurer this past weekend. He's going to have Brian Maurer back healthy more than likely. He's got Jawan Jennings and Marquez Callaway who are getting ready to try to make a legacy for themselves in this run, more of a legacy for themselves. They've already done plenty during their time at Tennessee, but they're trying to go out on a very positive note. And I think CJ has come away with the statement of the night that Tennessee could run through the back end of this schedule. CJ, congratulations. You are the champion of the 2nd edition of the Rocky Top Rumble. You have your 45-second paper toss now.
Well, I mean, we didn't do very good last week, but we came back. We did what we needed to do, got the dub. Good game to everybody else, and move on to next week.
All right, CJ keeping it short and simple, and that's how he is.